The moment Brandon Mitchell grabbed Madison Harper's dress and tore it down the middle in front of 300 students. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just whispered 5 words that made his blood run cold. "I'm sorry, Liam. So sorry." Nobody knew who Liam was. Nobody knew why the new girl stood there, pieces of fabric hanging from her shoulders, looking not at her attacker, but through him like she was seeing a ghost. And nobody, not even Brandon himself, understood why those 5 words made the toughest bully in Riverside High School freeze like he'd been shot. Madison Harper had been at our school for exactly 47 days. I know because I counted. We all did. From the moment she walked into first period chemistry, with her plain gray sweater and those eyes that seemed to carry the weight of the world, we knew she was different. Not different in the way that makes you popular or interesting, different in the way that makes you a target. If you're feeling that rush of what's going to happen next, hit that like button. It really helps more people discover these stories. And if you want to share where you're watching from, drop it in the comments below. For those who want to support more stories like this one, there's a thanks button right under this video. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps me bring you more inspiring tales of courage and standing up for what's right. Thank you for being here. Now, let's see what happens when push comes to shove. You know how wolves can smell fear? Well, Brandon Mitchell could smell pain, and Madison Harper reeked of it. I should probably tell you about Brandon first. 6'3", 220 pounds of pure athlete, wrestling team captain, full ride to Arizona State already locked in. His father owned half the car dealerships in Phoenix, and his mother sat on the school board. Untouchable didn't even begin to describe him. He wasn't just the king of Riverside High, he was the executioner. But there was something else about Brandon that most people didn't see. I saw it because I'd known him since middle school, back when he was just a scrawny kid who loved superhero comics and actually smiled. That Brandon disappeared 2 years ago, right around the time of, well, I'll get to that. Madison's first mistake was sitting alone at lunch, in the ecosystem of Riverside High. Sitting alone was like bleeding in shark-infested waters. She chose the corner table by the windows, pulled out a book, and ate her sandwich in complete silence. No phone, no earbuds, just her and whatever demons she was running from. Brandon noticed her on day 3. I remember because I was sitting at his table when Derek Chen pointed her out. New girl's weird, bro. Never talks to anyone. Bets on how long before she cracks. Brandon didn't respond right away. He just stared at Madison with this look I couldn't quite read. When he finally spoke, his voice had that edge that made my stomach drop. "What's her story?" "Nobody knows." Tyler Morrison chimed in. "Transferred from some school in Tucson. Perfect grades, no social media, nothing. It's like she appeared out of thin air." That should have been the end of it. Just another invisible kid trying to make it through high school. But something about Madison Harper got under Brandon's skin in a way I'd never seen before. It started small. Accidentally, bumping into her in the hallway, knocking her books off her desk. Kid stuff, really. The kind of harassment that was so common at Riverside that teachers pretended not to see it. But Madison's reaction, or lack thereof, was what escalated everything. She never flinched, never cried, never even looked angry. She'd just pick up her books, straighten her clothes, and continue on like nothing happened. It was eerie. Most kids either fought back or broke down. Madison did neither. She absorbed every hit, every insult. every humiliation with this terrible resignation that seemed to drive Brandon insane. I tried talking to him about it once. We were in the locker room after wrestling practice, and I could see that look in his eyes, the one that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. "Maybe leave the new girl alone," I suggested, trying to sound casual. "She's obviously been through something." Brandon slammed his locker so hard the whole row shook. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Then tell me, what's your deal with her?" He turned to face me, and for a second, I saw something raw and painful flash across his face. "She reminds me of someone." Before I could ask who, Coach Williams walked in. "Mitchell, my office. Now." That was 3 weeks before the dress incident. 3 weeks of escalating torment that made everyone increasingly uncomfortable. Even Brandon's usual crew started backing off. Derek pulled me aside after Brandon shoved Madison down the stairs. She somehow landed on her feet. Cat-like. Which only made him angrier. "Something's wrong with him," Derek said. "Like, more than usual. It's like he wants her to fight back. Like he needs it." Have you ever watched someone self-destruct in slow motion? That's what it felt like watching Brandon during those weeks. The anger that had always simmered just below the surface was boiling over. He was getting into fights with other students, arguing with teachers, even snapping at his own friends. And always, his eyes would find Madison in the crowd, watching her with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Madison, for her part, seemed to shrink further into herself with each passing day. She started wearing baggier clothes, keeping her head down, taking longer routes to avoid the main hallways. But she never missed school, never reported Brandon, never asked for help. It was like she believed she deserved it. I noticed other things, too. The way Madison moved too smooth, too controlled, like a dancer or something else. The way she always sat with her back to the wall, eyes on every exit. The small leather bracelet she wore that she'd touch unconsciously, like a talisman. And once, when Ashley Rodriguez accidentally startled her in the bathroom, Madison's hands came up in what looked suspiciously like a defensive stance before she caught herself. The tension was building to something. We all felt it. Even the teachers seemed nervous, giving Brandon's table a wider berth than usual. Principal Edwards had called Brandon's parents in twice. But nothing changed. Money talks. And the Mitchell family had been donating to Riverside for 3 generations. Then came October 23rd, Halloween Spirit Week, the day everything exploded. Madison had actually made an effort that day, wearing a knee-length dress with little pumpkins on it. It was the most color any of us had seen her wear. She almost looked normal, happy, even. Like maybe she was finally starting to feel safe. She should have known better. We all should have. I was in the main hallway when it happened, along with what felt like half the school. Lunch had just ended, and everyone was heading to 5th period. Madison was at her locker, switching out textbooks. Brandon appeared out of nowhere, his crew flanking him like soldiers. The hallway went quiet, the way it does when everyone knows something bad is about to happen. "Nice dress," Brandon said, his voice carrying that fake friendly tone that meant danger. Finally trying to fit in, Madison didn't turn around, just kept organizing her books. "Please leave me alone." "Leave you alone." Brandon laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You show up here with your little act, your little victim routine. Wearing that." He grabbed her wrist. "The one with the bracelet. Where did you get this?" For the first time since she'd arrived at Riverside. Madison looked him in the eye. You wouldn't understand. Try me. It was a gift. Her voice was barely a whisper. From someone who mattered. Something in Brandon snapped. I saw it happen the exact moment his control shattered. He grabbed the front of her dress with both hands. You don't deserve to wear this. You don't deserve any of it. On the fabric tore with a sound that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent hallway. Madison stood there, exposed and vulnerable. The ruined dress hanging in pieces. 300 students held their breath, phones coming out. Everyone waiting for her to break down. Run away. Something. But Madison Harper did none of those things. She stood perfectly still, looked Brandon dead in the eye, and spoke those 5 words that changed everything. I'm sorry, Liam. So sorry. Brandon's face went white. His hands, still holding the torn fabric, began to shake. What did you say? I said I'm sorry. Madison's voice was stronger now, but tears were streaming down her face. I'm sorry I hurt him. I'm sorry I couldn't save him. I'm sorry he's gone because of me. Stop! Brandon's voice cracked. Stop talking. Every day I wake up and he's not there. Every day I have to live with what I did. And every day I think, maybe if I let people hurt me enough, it might somehow make up for— Stop! Brandon shoved her hard against the lockers. You don't know anything about Liam. You don't get to say his name. That's when Coach Williams appeared, moving faster than I'd ever seen the 55-year-old former Marine move. He grabbed Brandon from behind, pulling him back. That's enough. Mitchell. But Brandon was beyond hearing. He was sobbing now, ugly, broken sobs that made everyone step back. She doesn't know. She wasn't there. I was there. I watched it happen, and I couldn't. Madison slid down the lockers until she was sitting on the floor, arms wrapped around her knees. I know you were there, she said quietly. Liam told me about his best friend Brandon, how you guys were going to be wrestling champions together, how you made him laugh when the physical therapy got too hard, how you never gave up on him, even when— Shut up. Brandon broke free from Coach Williams and dropped to his knees in front of Madison. How do you know that? How do you know any of that? Madison reached into her ruined dress pocket and pulled out a photo. Even from where I stood, I could see it: 2 boys in wrestling gear, arms around each other's shoulders, huge grins on their faces. One was clearly a younger Brandon. The other— Oh my God, Ashley Rodriguez whispered beside me. She's his sister. Madison is Liam's sister. The hallway exploded, everyone talking at once, the story spreading like wildfire. But in the center of the chaos, Brandon and Madison just stared at each other. 2 broken kids drowning in shared grief. You're Maddie, Brandon said, his voice hollow. He talked about you all the time. His big sister, the karate champion, said you were teaching him moves to help with wrestling. Madison nodded. Until I threw him wrong. One stupid mistake during practice. And she couldn't finish. It wasn't your fault. The words seemed to physically hurt Brandon to say. The doctor said his spine was already weak from that fall he took rock climbing. You couldn't have known. But I should have been more careful. I was the expert. I was supposed to protect him. Yeah, well, I was supposed to be there that day. We were going to practice together, but I blew him off to hang with some girl. If I'd been there, you couldn't have changed anything. Neither could you. They stared at each other, the truth of it hanging between them like a revelation. 2 kids who'd been torturing themselves for 2 years over the same tragedy, finding each other in the worst possible way. Coach Williams cleared his throat. "All right, everyone back to class. Show's over." When nobody moved, he raised his voice. "Now." The hallway slowly emptied, but I lingered, watching as Coach helped both kids to their feet. He draped his jacket over Madison's shoulders, covering her ruined dress. "Both of you, my office. We're calling your parents and getting you the help you should have had 2 years ago." As they walked away, I heard Brandon say quietly, "He never blamed you. You know, even at the end. He made me promise to tell you that if anything happened." Madison stopped walking. "Then why didn't you?" "Because I blamed myself too much to face you. Because seeing you would mean admitting he was really gone because—" His voice broke. "Because I'm a coward." "No," Madison said firmly. "You're just hurt. We both are. Let me know if you've ever carried guilt like that, the kind that eats you alive from the inside. The kind that makes you believe you deserve every bad thing that happens to you." They disappeared into Coach Williams's office, leaving behind a hallway full of stunned students and a story that would change Riverside High forever. But that's not where it ended. Not even close. Because what happened next, when the video went viral? When both families got involved? When the truth about Riverside's toxic culture finally came to light? That's when things got really complicated. That's when Madison Harper, the girl who wouldn't fight back, finally showed us why she'd been holding back all along. But that's a story for another time. For now, just know this: sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who are hurting just as badly. And sometimes, the only way to heal is to face that pain together, no matter how much it costs. The dress, Madison kept it. Had it framed. Actually, hanging in the counseling center she and Brandon eventually opened for teens dealing with trauma. A reminder that sometimes things need to be torn apart before they can be put back together stronger. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First came the aftermath of that day in the hallway. The investigations. The revelations. The moment when Madison finally stopped holding back and showed everyone exactly what a teenage karate champion was capable of when pushed too far. And Brandon, well, he had his own journey to make. One that would take him from the wrestling mat to a therapist's office, to a place he never expected, standing beside Madison as they faced their demons together. Have you ever seen pain transform into purpose? That's what I witnessed over the next few months. And trust me, you're going to want to hear how it all went down. The video hit the internet at 4:23 p.m. that same day. By midnight, it had 2 million views. By morning, every major news outlet in Arizona was calling Riverside High. And Madison Harper, the girl who wouldn't fight back, was about to show the world exactly what she'd been holding inside. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you what happened in those crucial hours after Coach Williams took Madison and Brandon into his office. I was in 6th period when the announcement came over the intercom. All students are to remain in their current classrooms until further notice. This is not a drill. Through the window, I could see police cars pulling into the parking lot, not 1 or 2-7. Something big was happening, and we all knew it had to do with what went down in the hallway. My phone buzzed. A text from Ashley Rodriguez. "Check Instagram. Now." The video was everywhere. Some sophomore had captured the whole thing: Brandon tearing Madison's dress, her devastating words about Liam, his complete breakdown. But what really set the internet on fire wasn't the bullying. It was what happened after the main cameras stopped rolling. Someone had kept filming as Coach Williams led them away. They caught Madison saying something that made conspiracy theorists go wild. I let him hurt me because I thought I deserved it. But there are others here who don't, and if I don't stop hiding, they'll keep suffering. The comments exploded. What others? What's she hiding? Why did she let him bully her? Then someone found Madison's past. A newspaper article from 2022, teen karate champion retires after tragic training accident. The photo showed a younger Madison holding a massive trophy, smiling beside a boy who looked exactly like her, Liam Harper. Age 14, promising wrestler and loving brother. The story spread like wildfire. Within hours, justice for Madison was trending, but also, Brandon deserves help. The internet was torn between vilifying Brandon and recognizing the pain behind his actions. That's when things got complicated. At 6:45 p.m., Brandon's father, Mitchell Sr., arrived at school in his $100,000 Mercedes, followed by a convoy of lawyers. Madison's parents pulled up 5 minutes later in their old Honda Civic. The contrast wasn't lost on anyone. What happened next? I heard from Coach Williams weeks later when he finally felt he could talk about it. He said he'd never seen anything like it in his 30 years of teaching. Madison's parents walked into that office ready for war. Her mother, a small woman who looked just like Madison, but with steel in her eyes, took one look at the lawyers and said, "You can bring 100 attorneys. It won't change what your son did to my daughter." But Madison, brave. Broken Madison stood up and said the words nobody expected. "No, this isn't about punishment. It's about healing. All of us." Mitchell Sr., who'd walked in ready to deny everything and threaten lawsuits, found himself face to face with the girl his son had tormented. The girl whose brother had been his son's best friend. The girl who'd lost everything and still had the strength to seek reconciliation instead of revenge. "Your son is drowning," Madison told him quietly. "Just like I was. We can let him sink, or we can throw him a lifeline. What would Liam want?" That broke something in Brandon's father. Coach Williams said the man, this powerful, untouchable millionaire, just crumbled because he knew about Liam. He'd driven those boys to wrestling practice 100 times. He'd been there at the hospital when... "I didn't know how to help him," Mitchell Sr. admitted. After Liam died, Brandon just shut down, became angry all the time. We tried therapy, but he refused to talk. Said he didn't deserve help. Madison's mother spoke up then. "Our daughter said the same thing. Quit karate. Quit everything. Wouldn't even stay in the same city, because everywhere reminded her of teaching Liam moves." The parents looked at their broken children and finally saw what Coach Williams had seen: two kids destroying themselves over the same guilt, finding each other in the worst way possible. That's when Principal Edwards made a fatal mistake. He walked in with the school's PR team and suggested everyone sign NDAs to protect the school's reputation. Madison stood up so fast her chair fell over. Protect the school. Where was that protection when Brandon was hurting? When I was getting shoved downstairs? When dozens of kids in this school are suffering in silence because speaking up means going against the untouchable elite? Miss Harper, you don't understand the complexities. I understand perfectly. Madison's voice carried a strength none of us had heard before. I've been here 47 days. In that time, I've documented 38 incidents of bullying that teachers witnessed and ignored. I've recorded 22 times someone needed help and was told to handle it themselves. I've watched this school sacrifice kids' mental health for its precious reputation. She pulled out her phone. I may have let Brandon hurt me, but I didn't let him hurt others. Every time he was targeting me, he wasn't targeting someone else. And while he was focused on me, I was collecting evidence of everything wrong with this place. Principal Edwards went pale. You can't. I can. And I will, unless this school makes real changes. Starting now. That's when the second video dropped. Someone leaked security footage from 2 weeks earlier. It showed Madison in the gym after hours. Alone. Practicing karate forms with a precision that took your breath away. Spinning kicks that could shatter concrete. Hand strikes that moved faster than the camera could track. This wasn't just some girl who took a few classes. This was a warrior who'd chosen to take every hit rather than fight back. The internet went insane. She could have destroyed him. Why didn't she defend herself? This girl is either a saint or insane. But then a third video surfaced, and this one changed everything. It was old. Grainy phone footage from 2 years ago. Liam Harper's last wrestling match, with Madison in the corner cheering him on. You could see Brandon there too, warming up for his own match. After Liam won, both Madison and Brandon hugged him, lifting him up in celebration. They looked so happy, so normal, just kids who had no idea their lives were about to shatter. The person who posted it added a caption before the accident. When they were family. That word family struck deep, because that's what they'd been. Brandon and Liam were inseparable. Madison was the cool older sister who taught them both self-defense moves. They had dinner at each other's houses, made plans for the future, until one terrible accident destroyed it all. The comments shifted. People started sharing their own stories of guilt, of friendship lost to tragedy, of pain that makes you lash out at the world. He-ing not. Hate started trending alongside the other hashtags. But Riverside High wasn't prepared for what came next. Madison and Brandon returned to school 3 days later, together. They walked through those front doors side by side, and the entire hallway fell silent. Madison wore her regular clothes, but there was something different about her she wasn't hiding anymore. Brandon looked like he'd aged 5 years, but his eyes had lost that terrifying rage. First period. An announcement came on, but instead of Principal Edwards's voice, we heard Madison. My name is Madison Harper. Many of you know me as the girl who got her dress torn in the hallway. Some of you have found out I'm Liam Harper's sister. But today, I want to talk about why I'm really here. She paused, and you could hear a pin drop in every classroom. I came to Riverside running from guilt. I let people hurt me because I thought I deserved it for what happened to my brother. But I've learned something: pain doesn't cancel out pain. It just creates more. Brandon Mitchell and I have spent 2 years destroying ourselves over the same tragedy. That stops now. Brandon's voice came next, rough with emotion. I've been angry for so long I forgot what it felt like to feel anything else. I hurt people because I was hurting. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. And the truth is, this school enables people like me, celebrates us as long as we win games, ignores our cries for help as long as the donations keep coming. Madison again. So we're done being silent, done pretending everything's fine. Starting today, Riverside High is going to face its demons, all of them. What followed was the most intense month in Riverside High history. Madison and Brandon led the charge for complete reform. They brought in trauma counselors. They exposed the cover-ups, the willful blindness, the culture that prioritized reputation over student welfare. The resistance was fierce. Some parents threatened to pull their kids and money out. Board members called emergency meetings. Principal Edwards tried everything to maintain control. That's when Madison did something that stunned everyone, including me. There was an assembly call to address recent concerns. Translation, damage control. Principal Edwards stood at the podium, spinning the situation, making it sound like a few isolated incidents blown out of proportion. Madison stood up in the middle of his speech. "May I, Miss Harper, this is not—" She was already walking to the stage. The security guard moved to stop her. And that's when we saw it. Madison flowed around him like water. Not aggressive, just inevitable. She reached the microphone before anyone could react. "My brother died 2 years ago," she said simply. "Not from the training accident that just paralyzed him. He died 6 months later from complications. But in those 6 months, you know what he did? He forgave me every day, even when I couldn't forgive myself." She looked directly at Brandon in the front row. "He talked about you constantly. His best friend Brandon, who made him laugh during the worst days, who never treated him differently after the accident, who showed up every single day until I couldn't watch him fade anymore," Brandon said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Until seeing him in that bed made me so angry I started taking it out on everyone else." Madison nodded. "We both failed him in different ways. I hid. You exploded. But Liam wouldn't want this. He'd want us to fix it." She turned to Principal Edwards. "So here's what's going to happen. Real counseling services, not just a guidance counselor who tells kids to toughen up. Anonymous reporting systems that actually protect students. Zero tolerance for bullying that applies to everyone, regardless of their last name or their parents' bank accounts. And mandatory mental health education. Because suffering in silence shouldn't be the only option. You can't just— Actually, we can." Brandon stood up. "My father's already agreed to fund it. Fully. No strings attached. And if the school refuses, we'll take every piece of evidence Madison collected to the media. Your choice." The gymnasium erupted. Students cheering. Teachers looking stunned. Principal Edwards defeated. But Madison wasn't done. "One more thing," she said. "This isn't about punishment. It's about prevention. How many kids in this room are carrying pain they can't talk about? How many are one bad day away from becoming what Brandon became? Or what I became so broken they think they deserve to be hurt?" Hands started going up. 1, then 5, then dozens. Kids admitting they needed help. It was like a dam breaking. Coach Williams, who'd been standing in the corner, walked to the stage. "I've been teaching for 30 years, he said. "I've seen a lot of broken kids. But I've never seen 2 kids turn their brokenness into something this powerful. Madison, Brandon, you've done what adults couldn't. You've made it okay to not be okay." The reforms happened faster than anyone expected. Within 2 weeks, Riverside had professional counselors on staff. Within a month, the anonymous reporting app was live. Within 2 months, 3 teachers and 1 administrator were removed for repeatedly ignoring reported incidents. But the real change was in the culture. Kids started talking, really talking, about pressure, about pain, about the impossible standards that made them feel like failures. The hierarchy that had ruled Riverside for generations began to crumble. Madison and Brandon became unlikely partners in this revolution. They organized support groups, brought in speakers, created safe spaces for kids to process trauma. Watching them work together was like watching two broken pieces form something stronger than either had been alone. The counseling center they eventually opened, Haven House, started as an after-school program in the old wrestling room. Liam's parents donated his photos to decorate the walls, so he can keep watching over kids who need help, his mother said through tears. I visited Haven House last week, 5 years after that day in the hallway. Madison was teaching a self-defense class, not just the physical moves, but the emotional strength to know when to use them. Brandon was in the next room, leading a group session for teens dealing with anger and guilt. On the wall between the two rooms hangs Madison's torn dress, framed with a plaque that reads, "Sometimes things need to break before they can heal." As I watched them work, Madison noticed me and smiled a real smile, not the hollow thing she'd worn those first 47 days. "You know what Liam would say if he saw this?" she asked. "What? About time you two stopped being idiots and helped each other." Brandon heard and laughed, actually laughed. He always was smarter than both of us combined. They've helped hundreds of kids since then. Kids who might have become bullies. Kids who might have become victims. Kids who just needed someone to see their pain and say, "I understand, and it's not your fault." The internet still argues about that video sometimes. Was Madison right to let Brandon hurt her? Should she have fought back sooner? Was Brandon a villain or a victim himself? But those questions miss the point. This was never about hero versus villain. It was about two kids drowning in the same ocean of guilt, pulling each other down until they realized the only way to survive was to save each other. Principal Edwards resigned that year. The new principal has Liam's photo in her office. Right next to the mission statement, Madison and Brandon wrote, "Every student matters. Every pain is valid. Every cry for help will be heard." Riverside High isn't perfect now. Nowhere is, but it's better. Kids still struggle, but they don't struggle alone. Bullying still happens, but it doesn't get ignored. Pain still exists, but it doesn't have to destroy. And Madison and Brandon, they're still healing. Some days are harder than others. Liam's birthday is always tough, but they face it together now, along with the community they built from their broken pieces. Have you ever seen pain transform into purpose? That's what happened at Riverside High. Two kids took the worst thing that ever happened to them and turned it into hope for others. They proved that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is admit you're broken, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is help someone else heal, even when you're still healing yourself. Madison was right that day in the hallway. She couldn't save her brother. Brandon couldn't either. But together, they've saved dozens of other kids from the darkness that nearly consumed them both. The dress still hangs in Haven House, torn fabric and all. A reminder that beauty can come from brokenness, that strength isn't about being invulnerable, it's about being vulnerable enough to let others see your wounds. And that sometimes, the person who hurts you most might be the very person who understands your pain best. If this story reminds you of someone who's struggling, maybe share it with them. Let them know they are not alone. Let them know that healing is possible, even when the guilt feels unbearable. Let them know that sometimes the first step isn't forgiveness, it's just admitting you need help. Because that's what Madison Harper taught us that day in the hallway. Not through her karate skills or her hidden strength, but through 5 simple words that changed everything. "I'm sorry, Liam, so sorry." And in the end, that's what saved them both. Not revenge, not violence, not even justice. Really, just 2 broken kids finally telling the truth about their pain. and finding out they didn't have to carry it alone anymore. The scariest bully in school and the girl who wouldn't fight back. Who would have thought they'd become the hope Riverside never knew it needed? But then again, the most powerful transformations often come from the most unexpected places. And sometimes, the people who seem the strongest are the ones who need saving most of all. That torn dress in Haven House. It became something of a pilgrimage site. Kids from other schools started visiting, touching the fabric like it held some kind of magic. And maybe it did. The magic of truth. The magic of facing your demons instead of running from them. Last month, I got a call from Madison. She's 23 now, finishing her psychology degree. "Remember that day?" she asked. "When Brandon tore my dress, how could I forget? I need to tell you something." She continued, "Something I never told anyone except Brandon and the therapists." She paused, and I could hear her taking a deep breath 500 miles away. That morning, before school, I stood in my bathroom with a bottle of pills. I was done. The guilt, the pain, the constant feeling that I didn't deserve to exist. I couldn't carry it anymore. But then I thought about all the other kids at Riverside who might be standing in their bathrooms with their own bottles of pills, and I decided to go to school one more day. Just one more. My heart stopped. "Madison, Brandon saved my life that day," she said simply. "Not by being kind, by being broken, by showing me I wasn't alone in my guilt, by making me realize that if someone as strong as him could fall apart, maybe falling apart wasn't weakness. Maybe it was just human." She told me Brandon was getting married next spring, to Derek Chen's sister, actually a girl who'd seen him at his worst and chose to love him anyway. Madison would be there, standing as his sister in survival, as they called each other. "You know what's funny?" Madison added. "Liam always said Brandon and I were too similar, both stubborn, both taking responsibility for things we couldn't control. He used to joke that we'd either be best friends or destroy each other. Turns out, we did both." Before we hung up, she said something that stuck with me. "People ask if I regret not fighting back sooner. But fighting back isn't always about throwing punches. Sometimes it's about absorbing the blow until the person throwing it realizes they're only hitting themselves. Brandon and I needed to break. We just needed to break together." The statistics from Riverside are staggering now. Bullying incidents down 70%. Counseling participation up 400%. 3 lives saved through suicide intervention in the last year alone. All because 2 kids decided their pain could mean something more than just pain. Coach Williams, now retired, visits Haven House every week. He tells the kids about that day in the hallway, about how courage sometimes looks like letting yourself get hurt, how strength sometimes means admitting you're weak, how the biggest battles aren't fought with fists, but with the decision to keep living when everything inside you wants to quit. So if you're watching this, carrying your own guilt, your own anger, your own conviction that you deserve every bad thing that happens to you, know this. You're not alone. Your pain is real, but it doesn't define your worth. And sometimes, the person you think is your enemy might be the only one who truly understands your hurt. Find your Haven House. Find your person who gets it. Especially if that person is someone unexpected. Because Madison Harper taught us that healing isn't pretty. It's messy and painful and sometimes looks like a torn dress in a high school hallway. But it's possible. It's always possible. And that's the real story of the girl who wouldn't fight back. Not because she couldn't, but because she was fighting a bigger battle. The battle to stay alive long enough to find meaning in her pain. She won. They both did. And if they can, so can you.